I don't intend to leave my kids money. I intend to leave them opportunities. My income grows in correlation with the value that I provide. That's what led me to investing in real estate, because I wanted to buy my freedom.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Remington Ramsey. We have officially hit top 5% of all podcasts globally. It's a great show, and what makes it great is great guests like Richard Spears from the Baton Rouge market. How you doing today, Richard?
Doing well, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Our mutual friend, Gina Miller, who's the publisher, says this about Richard. He is actually the winner of the Servant's Heart Award. The Servant's Heart means to have a mindset or a desire to selflessly and sacrificially serve others, regardless of your feelings towards them or what it may cost you. You will find that this realtor philanthropist goes above ordinary efforts to make their community a better place. They are deeply concerned and caring, and for all the right reasons. And today we are going to talk about building a community and what it means to be a part of your community. In the pre-show, just a short time I've known you, I totally understand why she says that. Before we dig into that, just so that you know why you're supposed to listen to Richard, over $700,000 in personal GCI just this last year, 40 under 40 business owner in the city, top 5 across the board of all brands in Baton Rouge, and number 2 sales team in his office. So Richard, you're quite the rock star, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Let's talk about community. You've won community building awards. When I asked you about community, your mission and your vision is based around community. Share with us your mission and your vision for your team.
Yeah, so our mission is to create an impact in the communities that we serve, just helping to close the wealth gap one family at a time. And so what that means for us is just right now within our community, it's just a huge gap of people who have not been able to obtain home ownership or just ownership in general. And I think the biggest key to it is a lack of education. It's just a lot of them are just ignorant, and that's not a bad word, but just ignorant on the process of actually obtaining home ownership, and from there just to serve in the communities that we are involved in. That's our vision, is to create an impact in the communities that we're involved in, and we do a lot of that through charity and philanthropy in the communities that we serve, and not just with money, but also with our tenor.
Well, so the heart of it, you always had a heart for this mission, but the specifics of home ownership you kind of fell into because you were transitioning from just being a real estate investor to actually selling the properties. And you said by your second sale, the second family you hoped, changed your perspective on everything. Tell us about that sale.
Yeah. Up until that point, man, real estate has just been transactional for me. Everybody in my family owned a home. My mom was an investor. I still is an investor, buy and hold investor. So I just thought that's what everyone does. You know, you grow up and you buy a house. I didn't know that there were people out there, who had never owned a home before. And so I met this couple. They were in their late 60s and had never owned a home, and still talk to those people every month, pretty much. And when I realized this, I was just kind of shocked. And when we actually found a home that was a great fit for them and we closed on that home, they were crying. And so that was the first time for me personally, just experiencing emotions attached to a real estate transaction. And it just kind of changed something in me, because I selfishly got into real estate sales because I lost some money in real estate investing. And I needed to recoup the money that I lost from a house that flooded. And so my only goal at the time was just to kind of recoup some of the money that I lost. But while I'm sitting at this closing table with these people and they're crying, it showed me something different, that there's a lot of people out here. And it also showed me that what I was doing was actually impacting someone's life. I literally just helped change someone's life. And so it changed my perspective around what I was doing, from how can I recoup some of the losses that I've incurred, to how can I go out and impact as many families or as many lives as I can.
Let me ask you about this couple. What made them all of a sudden in their 60s decide to buy the home? Was that a conversation you had where you let them know that it was easier attainable, or did they finally have enough money? Did they come to you? How did that whole thing transpire?
Yeah, so crazy enough, their daughter found me on Facebook. When I first started this business, I was doing a lot of Facebook marketing. Their daughter found me on Facebook, and she reached out to me to let me know that her parents had been renting for years and they were paying this insane amount of rent, and asked me could I help them, and I was like, well, of course I can help them. And so I just pretty much let her know that they can meet me at my office, and she said, well, they won't be able to come up to your office. Can you meet them at the house? And I was like, okay. So I met them at the house, and as a landlord myself, I was just surprised that that landlord was able to get the amount of rent that he was getting from these people for this house, because the house is pretty much a slum. Like, and it was just crazy to me that they were paying that amount for the house they were living in. And I actually was able to help them find a house in the same neighborhood that was updated, and for like $400 or $500 less than what they were paying in rent. And it's life.
Wow, that's incredible. So then you got into the industry specifically because you were investing, a house flooded, and you thought what? You wanted to get your license to save money and just flip the house, sell it? Or what do you mean you were trying to recoup your money?
So at the time, I knew my 9 to 5 job wasn't going to be enough, because when that house flooded, we pretty much wiped out our savings account and maxed out 2 credit cards to put that house back together to put the tenant back in the house. And so now I'm in debt, and I had just worked my behind off for 3 years to get myself out of debt, and now I'm right back in debt. And so just up late at night on a train, because I was a conductor at Union Pacific Railroad, I was just trying to figure out, because I'm reading this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it talks about starting businesses, and it talks about having secondary income, and talks about assets and liabilities. So I was trying to figure out what I can do on the side to make some secondary income to replenish our savings and pay off these credit cards that we maxed out. And I thought about real estate sales, because I felt like I could make some commissions to pay off some of these cards. And this could be extra income to help me pay off this debt that we had took on.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki. That's been an instrumental book in a lot of people's lives. Like the way he wrote it and made it so dumbed down for someone like me at the time when I read it, had no idea what I was doing when it came to money. Are you a big reader? I'm going to ask you, be thinking about some other books you can mention, because we have a lot of growth junkies that listen to this podcast. We're constantly promoting and selling books and not getting any commission for it, but people grow. Well, let's talk about community for a second. So the concept of community changed for me a few years back when I realized that I'll just talk about church. I was driving to a church and passing a bunch of churches on the way. And there's a biblical concept that basically says that you really should be doing community. You should be doing church in your proximity, not just the people you call your community. And the social media, I feel like, kind of changed that, where it's like you can have a community of online people. And so it kind of changes the fact that you can have a grouping of people wherever you want. But at least the biblical principle that I was privy to says that your immediate, the houses around you, the people in your community is actually your community. So talk to me about, as you approach your mission and your vision for your actual community, what that means to you. How are you doing that?
Yeah. So for me, Baton Rouge is a complex city, and the part of Baton Rouge that I personally grew up in was pretty much an underserved community, right? And that's why I grew up. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to do was, because I knew what it was like growing up as a kid in that area. We didn't have much to look up to or look towards, if that makes sense. And so I know personally from my life, having a 2-parent household was instrumental, because a lot of my friends didn't have dads in the house. So I know what kind of impact that did for me. That was one thing. I knew what it was like to see people actually accomplishing things, and how that it could inspire you to do the same thing as well. And I also knew the negative impact of seeing negative things and how that can help to inspire you. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to do once I did achieve some small amount of success was to, one, be a part of sharing my success with the young adults in that area through some of the classes that I teach down there, but also give back and help people in that area. one, by educating them on ownership, because I do think that's step one to building wealth in this country. And I think that's one of the greatest things about our country is how you can use real estate as a vehicle to build wealth. So that was one of the things, just teach as many people as I can how they can grow wealth through real estate. To be a role model for some of the young adults in that area. And three, the people who just don't have the resources to be able to help themselves, how can I use my influence and my own personal resources to help them in that area? And those are the things that we do.
Well, you talked about the wealth gap, and I'm not sure where you started. We haven't talked about that yet, but I know where you are because you told me $700,000 in GCI, and we're going to go party and buy watches and stuff. So that's where you currently are, but you're serving a lot of underprivileged communities. How do you balance that? How do you, is it one of those things where you kind of share the vision with people that you're helping and showing them what's possible because of like your own success?
Yeah. So that is part of it. And transparently, man, I didn't even know what survivor's remorse was, but I realized I kind of had that because at times I did feel kind of guilty because I had certain things and certain wealth and income that a lot of my friends never realized, or just people in that community didn't realize. But I also realized as well that sometimes, especially young adults, they'll be what they see, not what you say. And so I also see it as an opportunity for me to be able to show them that, hey, this is what's possible. It doesn't matter where you start or where you come from, but with perseverance and hard work, this is what's possible.
You said survivor's remorse?
Yeah.
Man, that's an interesting concept. So I grew up not super poor, but didn't have money. And our family didn't have money. And it was one of those things where we didn't say we were living paycheck to paycheck, but that's what we were doing. Like you make money and you spend money. And even if you get a little bit of a bump in lifestyle, you're still spending that money. And so I had a pretty bad relationship with money. Phrases like money is the root of all evil and all that kind of stuff can really taint your perspective on what that is. So when I actually started a company and a business and it started doing well and I started getting money, I felt bad about it. Didn't know what to do with that because there was no reason for the money. Now you've paid for your lifestyle and you have a little bit of money saved in the bank. Now what do you do with it? And I found that the people who have a plan for the dollar past their lifestyle feel way more fulfilled and have a much better relationship with money than I did. And so I was on a mission for that. So for you, I know this is the way I'm saying that is brand new to you, but the concept isn't. And so what is your plan for your money past your, I mean, the servant's lifestyle, like the philanthropist part of you, like, what do you do with the extra money?
Yeah. So that's a good question. And I do have a plan for it, man. And the biggest thing for me is just legacy is being able to provide a legacy for my great grandkids. And that's what drives me. That's what wakes me up in the morning, every morning, is being able to provide a foundation so they can have opportunities. But not just them, but okay, past my great grandkids, how can I create situations and opportunities for other people's kids who may not be able to have that for themselves, by whether that's through education or whether that's through what we do with philanthropy and just helping certain organizations that's able to do that work as well. How can we sow seeds? And so that's the biggest thing is I want my great grandkids to remember my name because of the choices that I made and the things that I did.
You've got 2 kids, 2 boys.
Yep.
Married 13 years. How old are your boys?
So one is 7 and one is 14.
So I got a good game for your boys, by the way. So Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, came out with a game called Cash Flow for Kids. Have you seen this? So
I hadn't seen the Cash Flow for Kids, but we played the other Cash Flow, the one for adults. We played that game, Black and Monopoly.
I mean, I love it. So my kids were a little too young for it when I presented to them. I was all excited. My wife was like, "This is not going to work," and she was right. But like when they get a little bit older, what I love about that game is like you could compare it to Monopoly, but on Monopoly, there's only one winner. And that's just not true about life. Like, we can have multiple winners. We can all win if we do it right. And that's what I love about that cash flow game. So it sounds like you're already tapped into that with your kids.
It's a long game, I will say that.
Yeah, you got to budget some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Monopoly Deal now, that's fun because you can play 15-minute games. So you're teaching your kids this. You want to leave a legacy. Is there a balance that you have to have? Like, tell me how you approach leaving money for people and helping them with money versus leaving too much money. I mean, you see spoiled rich kids on the other conversely. Like, what's the? I feel like there's a fine line between leaving a legacy, but then also leaving enough money to your kids where they feel like they don't have to work for it, or is it a mindset? Like, you tell me.
So I do think it's a mindset thing, and I think it's the way we parent our kids. And so one of the things that I do with my kids, and because of that, is my kids know not to ask me for anything, but to ask me how they can earn something, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that started early because I know my personal drive and success is attached to me having to earn things because my parents didn't have enough money to do it themselves. So, I've been entrepreneurial since I was as young as I can remember. And so being able to instill that in my kids because they don't have the same need that I've had is just creating those same situations by not saying yes and saying, okay, this is what you want. What are you planning to do to earn it? And so it's instilling the habits early because I don't intend to leave my kids money. I intend to leave them opportunities. So I want to give them access to opportunities, but I don't intend to dump any amounts of money into their hands.
So what does that look like? Like an asset? Like you'll leave a home that they have to manage behind? Or what does an opportunity look like?
Yeah. So that's assets. That's homes in trust. So it's controlled by the trust and they just can't squander it. It's mutual funds. It's investments that we've made that's controlled by trust again, so they can't go out and squander it. And now the new thing is just trying to figure out ways to where we can manipulate these trusts to where they have access to it with certain conditions. And by no means, this is nothing that I've thought of myself. I've been learning about this and reading a book called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And this is the concept for their family. And just halfway through this book, it leaves an example of looking at the Vanderbilt family and looking at the Rockefeller family. And the Vanderbilt family has pretty much depleted their wealth, while the Rockefeller family still has their wealth. And it's because they didn't leave their kids money. They left opportunities through trust and whole life insurance policies. So, when one of the Rockefellers, they don't inherit a bunch of money. They have to go to their family trust and their family trust board to say, hey, I want to buy a home. Okay, great. You can use the family bank to mortgage your home with no interest rate. Or I want to go to college. Great. You get your money for college from the family trust. Or I have a business idea. Okay, great. You present that idea to the family trust board and they'll approve your business and fund it, with no interest from the family bank, but you have to pay it back to the family bank. You have to get a whole life insurance policy. And the family bank has to be the beneficiary of that policy so that the families continue to fund this family bank, if that makes sense.
I love that. Yeah, we're gonna tag that book in the show notes. And again, make zero commissions. We're really good at this business, making other people money. You mentioned college. What are your thoughts on college? Did you go to college?
I dropped out.
You dropped out what year?
Second year in.
Second year in. I went all 4 years, but I've got pretty strong feelings on the current collegiate setup, machine, I call it. But what are your thoughts on your kids are under 7? What are you going to tell them when they get to the age where they can decide to go to college, become an entrepreneur, or both?
I actually hope they do go to college, even though I'm not a big proponent of it. I don't think you needed to be successful in this country. But I think college does some great things as far as relationships, because in any business, I think it revolves around relationships, and having the right relationships can help you in whatever business you decide to pursue. So that's one thing. I think it helps with that. And two, I think it builds the calluses and the habit of learning. because if you are going to be an entrepreneur, you forever learning. Yeah, you're forever a student, and you have to build that muscle. And I never read as many books in my life until I became an entrepreneur, because I think one of the biggest things, well, I say until I became a full-time entrepreneur, because I always did entrepreneurial things, but when I cut the lifeboats and became full time, I realized that my income grows in correlation with the value that I provide. And I realized that to provide more value, I have to become more valuable. I learned it. And so I know that you have to forever be a student. And I think that's one of the things that school does too. It creates that habit of learning.
Yeah, I think people limit the term student to government, college, but you can be a YouTube university grad pretty easily these days. Why did you drop out?
I wanted to make money. I wanted to make money. I wanted to make money fast, and I didn't want to wait to make money. I was a business major. I watched my cousin graduate and get a job at Target, and I said to myself, that's not enough money for me." Yeah,
What was his degree in?
same thing, business management and marketing. I was going to school for the same thing, and I saw that, but I also saw my dad's checks sitting around the counters at home. And at the time, I thought six figures was a lot. Everything is six figures. Don't get me wrong, six figures is a lot of money. Uh, I don't think it's a lot of money anymore, but back then I thought it was. And I said to myself, okay, my cousin is working at Target. My dad is already making six figures. I'll just go do that for now.
What was he doing? What was your dad doing?
He was also conducting Union Pacific Railroad, just basically riding on trains.
And you said you've been an entrepreneur for as long as you can remember. Were you an entrepreneur as a kid? Did you have any businesses, candy or lawn mowing, or what did you start out in?
And I did all of the things. My first venture was cutting grass, and I got smart about it and just started soliciting the business and having my friends cut the grass, and I would split the money with them. I did the candy thing all throughout middle school, and I took that money and rolled it into throwing parties in high school. I was a freshman in high school, and I partnered with our band drum major, who was a DJ. So he had all this DJ equipment, but he didn't have any money. I had a bunch of money at the time. And so my dad would sign leases for buildings for us, and I would put up the money for the lease for the building, just to lease it out for one night. He would come in with all of this DJ equipment, and we would charge high school teens to get into parties. And I did that all throughout high school. Yeah. So I put parties out throughout high school. And after high school, I got into the music industry. I had enough money to buy my own studio equipment. So I went out and spent thousands of dollars on studio equipment, and I ran a music studio for years until all of the rappers that I was kind of recording, all of them was getting murdered. And I was just like, okay, yeah, at the time I had my first son on the way. I was like, this is not the life for me, up at 2 or 3 in the morning, recording these people and the entourages that come with them. That's in the studio. I was like, this is not it for me anymore. So I sold that equipment. And that's where I just kind of focused on just working a normal job at the railroad for a while, because I wanted a sense of normalcy. And I had a family now. I had a young son. And I was trying to find some sense of normalcy. And I found myself in some debt as well by just getting caught up in the culture of buying things. Everybody at the job bought things, boats, cars, and houses, and all of the things, right? And one day a manager came to me and said, "Hey, man, is that your vehicle outside?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is." And it was a Land Rover at the time. He's like, "Didn't you just buy such and such and such and such?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, we got you now. I don't have to worry about you taking off work anymore." And he was right. I had bought so much stuff. And so he said that that's what led me to investing in real estate, because I wanted to buy my freedom. And I said, if I had enough house to pay my bills, that'll give me the freedom to where I can take off whenever I want to.
So that realization shifted your thinking. And in that moment, what decisions do you start to make to shift to making your money work for you versus you working for the money?
Yeah. I went straight to YouTube University. And that's how I found the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I was up late every night on these trains, just trying to figure out how I can get myself out of the debt, how I can find a way, because I started asking questions. So the guys that were at that job who didn't need overtime or was going home early every day, I started to ask what they were doing, because I wanted to know the difference between them and the guys that needed all this overtime and was at work all the time. And so I started to realize one of the guys I talked to, he owned a trailer park. He had a trailer park, and all these trailers paying him rent. Another guy owned a bunch of rental properties. Another guy owned a farm. And so I started realizing all of these guys own these things that's paying them. And so I started trying to figure out, okay, what can I own that can pay me while I still work so I can go home early every day? And that's when I went down a rabbit hole of YouTube University. I found Bigger Pockets podcast. I found Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so I came up with this bright idea to my wife that, hey, we're going to start investing in real estate.
Amazing trajectory there. When you're doing work in the community and you're representing people and trying to close the wealth gap, is this stuff that you've learned and study in the books that you've read, is that the kind of stuff that you share with the community around while you're also trying to help them buy their first home?
It is. So these are the things I teach, and I teach it from my own personal life experiences to date. And this is one of the biggest things that I'm proud of. We've had a little bit over 20% of our past clients become investors, and they now own second and third. And I have one guy, man, he's on the way to quit his job and becoming a full-time high school basketball coach because that was his passion. And he wanted to do it. And he's bought several multifamily properties from me. And we started off with one house, 6 years ago. And now he's to the point where he owns multiple properties. But this is one of the things that I'm most proud of. I've been able to help past clients become investors.
It's amazing. What are some of the other books that you've read recently that you've already dropped to? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the Rockefeller's book. What are some other influential books that we can throw out there?
Yeah, one of my favorite ones is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Of course, we all know Think and Grow Rich, which is a great book, but Outwitting the Devil is the prequel to that book, and he pretty much explains why the people who read Think and Grow Rich didn't obtain the success that they thought they were going to attain. It's because of what he talks about in Outwitting the Devil, which is pretty much not having goals. Anytime you don't have goals set in life, you're a drifter. You're a big drifter, and it's like going on a road trip with no GPS. So that book changed my life. The Ultimate Collection of Jim Rohn. I pretty much listen to that twice a year, every year. I've been listening to that for the last 8 years, pretty much twice a year. I am a big fan of Jim Rohn. He's changed my entire mindset because this business is tough. It's not always peaches and cream, but when you have the mindset to keep going, it helps. And one book I read recently, I won't go down the rabbit hole of books, was Never Enough, from Barista the Billionaire. I don't know if you've heard of him, but yeah, he's an amazing guy out of Canada. He pretty much built a big tech hedge fund. And one of the things I like most about the book is he teaches, because it's to your point that you made earlier, when you start having a certain amount of income, you get to a point to where, you're going down this rabbit hole of, okay, what now? What next? And, feeling guilty and all of these things. But that's what that book is about. And one of the biggest things that I got out of that book is just not overlooking enough for more.
You read a lot of business books. You ever read like fiction or history or anything like that?
Yeah, I love biographies when it comes to history and the fiction. Even the fiction books that I read are pretty much self-help, because The Alchemist is one of my favorite fiction books.
Which one? The Alchemist?
Yeah. That's pretty much a self-help book too, because it requires you to take chances and take that risk and cut those boats. Yeah, but that's one of my.
Have you read Boys in the Boat?
I have. That's an amazing book.
I love Boys in the Boat.
The movie was better.
The book was better. It goes a little bit deeper into like the stories and the poverty. But I realized a couple of years ago that I was reading a ton of business books, and I stumbled across, I was like, I'm just so obsessed with business. I'm not going to read fiction. But then I can't remember what book. I was like, I'm just going to take a break and read some fiction. And then I realized, man, I learned so much about business and life when I read fiction and history and biographies. Like I've got a little bit more of a balance now, but that's great. I could talk about books all day long. Boys in the Boat, man. Well, Richard, this has been awesome. And I hope someone is inspired to start somewhere and start to groom a community around them and start to really impact the community that already exists. I think that's two ways to look at it. One, you can get involved in the community that already exists around you, or you can, within the community, start your own community of people that are into the same things that you are and start to impact them for better, which it sounds like that's exactly what you do. Well, that's all the time we have. This has been Richard Spears. If you want to impact who we have on the show or what we talk about, email us at podcast@realproducersmag.com. And if we want to find Richard, where would we find you?
Instagram at realtor_rich_. And Facebook, Richard Spears. But yeah, it's definitely Instagram. I'm highly active. I respond all day, every day on Instagram, and I'm very active on Instagram at realtor_rich_.
I love it. You just got one more follower. We'll see you next time on the Real Producers Podcast.
Yeah, can I leave them with one quote?
Oh yeah, go ahead, man.
So Zig Ziglar, man, I live by this. You can have everything you want if you're just willing to help enough other people get what they want. And I believe it. And I think Jeff Bezos is a prime candidate of that, because he helps a lot of people get what they want. And I'm pretty sure he has most of what he wants.
Yeah. He was recently on a panel where he was kind of talking about the haters and the haters that were specifically talking about how much money he's made. And he's like, I think the problem is we make these Forbes lists, which is the top 100 richest men in the world. And people are cheering for you. People are going to cheer for you until you make it really big, and then they start hating on you. And he said, the list that I wish they would create is how much money I've made other people. And I thought that was really powerful. He's like, I got to be on the top of some of those lists, because the amount of people that I've made, the millionaires and even potential billionaires that I've created, is much more interesting to me. And I thought that was an interesting take. So yeah, Zig Ziglar. Good stuff, Richard. Thanks for being on the show. We'll see you next time.
All right.